beginning of my career was in 1994. However, it wasn't until 1998 that I got involved with my first online education company, Computer Learning Centers. The stock had gone from $1 to 44 in a little bit over 18 months. And a client of mine called me up and said, hey, you know, this kind of smells fishy. Do you think you could dig around, find out what's going on? Why are the numbers so good? They look a little bit too good, and maybe the stock is a short. And so I did that. And the first thing I did was start calling various state agencies and Department of Education, and each state has, you know, has a regulatory body that's supposedly looking over these schools. And the U.S. Department of Education also has 8 regions, which covers various regions of the country, a couple of states in each. And they don't necessarily talk to each other. So I started talking to all these various regulatory bodies, and they said, hey, have you ever heard of this Computer Learning Center? And they said, yeah, I have. And I said, have you ever seen, you know, fraud, bad behavior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And they said, yeah, I have. And I said, can I have those documents? And they said, yes, you can. And rather innocently, I took some of those government documents from, let's say, a region in the Department of Education and took them to a different region and said, hey, I don't really know how to interpret these. There's a lot of, lingo in there, this government lingo that I don't really understand. Can you explain it? And several of those regulators were like, oh my God, if I had seen this, then I would have known when I did my own investigation what to look for. Typically, the for-profit education schools are notoriously bad for 2 things. One is the use and abuse of incentive compensation. In the 1980s, U.S. Department of Education basically did a whole slew of store closings of various for-profit schools. In particular, they would have their enrollment counselors on incentive compensation have a quota, so they would be incentivized to go out and recruit students that weren't necessarily qualified, and especially like barber schools and truck driving schools and beauty salon schools and things of that nature, really on the edge. I mean, several of those schools had 50, 60, 70% dropout rates. And the other problem within the industry is refunds. They miscalculated refunds. What do you do when a student signs up, drops out, says see you later, and the school is supposed to make a refund to that student? What if the school doesn't give you the accurate refund? What if they don't do it on a timely basis? What if they don't make a refund at all? And so the government got a little upset with that. And I found the Computer Learning Center, and I called up the federal government, and on a couple of levels, I was sort of being referred up the food chain. And one day I received a call from several very high people at the Department of Ed, and they said, why are you asking all these questions about Computer Learning Center? And I said, well, there's a couple of us on Wall Street who, think the accounting is not right, and it looks like they could be committing fraud, and that their refunds are particularly late. And they said, well, we've been trying to catch them with their hands in the cookie jar for the last several years. And I said, that's not good, because I did it in about a month, and I'm not that smart. If you guys are sitting in front of all the data, don't tell me you can't close these guys down. So I went to one of the local television stations in Washington, D.C. The company was based in Washington, D.C. Obviously, the U.S. Department of Education and Justice Department and so forth are in Washington, D.C. Well, the school had its corporate headquarters in 2 or 3 of the schools in Washington, D.C. So I enlisted WJLA-TV, an ABC affiliate, to go into the school and pretend to be a student enrolling into the school, and with hidden cameras all over the place, which they did. And they got a guy, an enrollment counselor, saying, you're going to make $100,000 a year if you sign up for our computer degree program or whatever, which at the time, and probably still, offering a guaranteed salary is a huge no-no. So that went on the air the next couple of days. That guy, the enrollment counselor, got fired. Nevertheless, it still made the Department of Education look really stupid really fast. And I called them. I'm like, here it is. I'm putting this in your lap. What's wrong with you? Let's go. And they didn't appreciate that, but I don't know, we have a sense of humor. And so the Illinois Attorney, then shortly after that, the Illinois Attorney General filed a fraud lawsuit against the company. And the way the regulations are enforced is very wishy-washy and not consistent at all. Sometimes, in some cases, when government or the state attorney general goes after one of these companies, they ask for the entire tuition to be refunded to that government authority. Other times they just put a small penalty on them and they just reimburse them for the small fee of literally like $50 when it could be like $5,000 for the student loans, which obviously makes no sense whatsoever. So anyway, through the grapevine, I heard that the federal government was going to do a site visit to the school. Usually those visits are announced 6 months in advance, and they gave the school 1 week to figure out whether or not say, hey, we're coming in a week, get ready. Well, again, through the grapevine, I got a call one night that the company was shredding documents. That's arrived. And hi, Mom. And so I get that call, and I call up somebody else, he calls somebody else, and it turns out that there was a class action law company suing the company, and they hired a private investigator to retrieve those documents out of the dump. And we took them to the Washington Post, and the Washington Post called it garbage gate and put it on the cover of the business section, and it wasn't always very funny to manage the company. Anyway, a couple of months went by as the government's trying to figure out what to do with the company, and they sent the company a bill for $187 million, which was all the student loan money that they had ever received, retroactive to about 7 years. And the stock was at about $4. The CFO came out and said, I don't know how much cash we have in the balance sheet, which was like $4 million. And he said, well, we don't have enough to pay that. A week later, they're in Chapter 7 of bankruptcy. So that was sort of my way of introducing myself to a lot of really large hedge funds who wanted to be like, okay, well, what's your next call?